Hello, everybody. We are here at The Wire. We got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about the NBA free agency hit, the draft hit as well. When we talk about the big moves that happened, we're going to have our NFL weekly recap as we always do. Tony's going to lead us off with that. And then we are going to have our most impactful player that changed their sport for better or worse. So we'll get to all of those. But first, guys, we're going to start it off with the NBA. I'm super excited, but I want to start off with the misses. I don't want to talk about the hits. Marvin and I will be ready for this. But, you know, I know there's somebody on the panel here that loves Michael Jordan. Loves him. It's like one of his favorite athletes of all time. Mine too, actually. I actually have all of his shoes. But you know what I've learned about Michael Jordan? He has no business being an owner and a general manager of a basketball team. And it's unfortunate because the man has earned his money and earned the right to do so. What he's shown time and time again, Kwame Brown, etc., that he's not capable of making good decisions. And I'm going with Exhibit A. I'm sure Exhibit B is where Tony will like to chime in, but Exhibit A, Gordon Hayward was signed for $30 million a year, a 4-year, $120 million deal. Gordon Hayward. Now, I don't feel like he was underrated or overrated when he came into the league. I feel like he earned his place going from Butler to Utah, and then he went to Boston and kind of got like a little hyped up. I think he was phenomenal in Utah when he had the opportunity to be the number one. But the problem is he went to Boston and then it was kind of this shared load. Then he got injured. He never really had the opportunities. Kyrie Irving came, they drafted Jason Tatum, and he didn't have a place. I'm not trying to say he's a scrub, but is he really a $30 million a year type player? Marvin, please, you shook your head immediately. Why don't you give us some of your feedback? He is now making virtually a max contract from the Charlotte Bobcats / Hornets.
Hell no, he's not worth $120 million. Gordon Hayward hasn't been the same since that injury. It was a catastrophic injury. Before that, when he was with the Utah Jazz, had an all-star season, was the number one scoring option. And as you mentioned, Richie, going to Boston and kind of it just never seemed to fit into that system. College was different, as we can clearly see. He had success with Brad Stevens at Butler, running a system that took them all the way to the championship game. But that level of success did not translate to the NBA. Completely different animal. So when you have a Jason Tatum and you have a Jaylen Brown and you have a Kyrie Irving and you got a Marcus Smart, you already got a cast of guys that are already scoring options, and Gordon Hayward just couldn't fit into that system and becoming even a third scoring option. So it confuses me as to why Michael Jordan thought that giving him a max deal would make the team better. I just don't understand what the goal is in Charlotte. You just draft LaMelo Ball, and you think that in free agency, Michael Jordan, that's the thing. Michael Jordan, he really doesn't have experience or really knows how free agency works. Honestly, because he's one of the greatest players of all time. So he doesn't have any clue. So he's played with one team. So he doesn't understand really the full scope of why guys decide to leave their respective franchises. But in this case, Gordon Hayward felt disrespected by Boston. I felt that's completely false. Boston did everything they could to try to insert Gordon Hayward coming back from that injury, and it just didn't work. You look at the past two postseasons. Michael Jordan, look at the past two postseasons. You see Gordon Hayward has not contributed nearly enough. They couldn't get past Miami. They couldn't get past the second round last year with Kyrie Irving. So I really don't understand what Michael Jordan thinks that he's getting out of Gordon Hayward, and all you out there, I don't think you understand it either. I mean, 4 years, $120 million, $30 million a year, when you could have saved that money and have got some more assets to kind of build around your rookie point guard, because Gordon Hayward is not the answer. And if you ask me, yeah, you can give him a max deal. But if Michael Jordan thinks you're going to get an all-star caliber player that he got out of him in Utah, it's gravely mistaken.
I'm shocked that by this for the simple fact that he wouldn't pay Kemba Walker, people. So Kemba was lights out all-star, perennial all-star. And year in and year out as an undersized guard, not Muggsy Bogues-ish, but very undersized, Kemba proved time and time again that he was a franchise type player, and he didn't pay him because he didn't feel like he was worth a supermax. Now, again, Gordon Hayward is not making a supermax, folks. You cannot make a supermax joining another team. That's how that goes. You have to play for 3 years before, Anyways, he wouldn't be willing to pay Kemba at the time $36 million, but he's willing to play Gordon Hayward 30 when Gordon hasn't been able to do anything yet. Now, again, maybe he finds his rhythm. I'm not just trying to completely smack talk, but we're going to go into Exhibit B because Tony and I talked about this briefly. LaMelo Ball. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad pick. I don't know if Tony agrees or disagrees, but LaMelo Ball, actually, I was hearing rumors originally that Minnesota was going to pick him and that actually Golden State also wanted him. And they went different routes, so... I'll get into that in a second, but Tony, do you have anything to say about LaMelo or perhaps LeVar saying he could beat Mike in a one-on-one?
Okay, first off, yeah. LeVar is not going to ever beat Michael Jordan one-on-one. I don't care if he had his legs missing and Michael Jordan was in a wheelchair. It's just not going to happen. To go back and touch on what you guys were talking about with Gordon Hayward, listen, he's been hurt multiple times. He's had the potential to be a good value player. I was reading an article and they said that out of the players on the team that he was on, Jason Tatum, 23.4 points per game, Kemba Walker, 20.4 points per game, Jaylen Brown, 20.3 points per game. Among that foursome, Hayward had the highest field goal percentage, and Hayward only averaged 17.5 points per game. So if you're looking at true shooting percentage, you're looking at 59.5% for Hayward, but still, points is what matters, number one. Other people are putting up points. Mike should know all about that because Mike would shoot 17 for 38, right? So at the end of the day, it's all about putting points on the board. So even though Hayward might be more proficient, I'm a little skeptical about the Hayward signing at that kind of money. Obviously, Michael Jordan is probably, I wouldn't say the worst GM or owner, I should say worst owner in the NBA, but he's definitely up there. The only owner that I would say would be worse than Michael would be the New York Knicks. But I'm interested to see what happens with Ball as being the first round pick. I mean, the top three guys, we all knew that they were going to go not where they were going to go, but we knew they were going to go 1, 2, and 3. It just all depended on what flavor the team wanted to add to their team. But yeah, I'm interested to see how this either unfolds in a good way or how it all gets shoved back into Michael's face about being, a really bad owner. But James Dolan is definitely, for me, the worst owner in the NBA.
Interesting. And worse is always an interesting term. I'll say this much. You got at least a good argument there, Tony, and that's a bigger topic for another day. Maybe we could kind of dissect who's done worse with what they've been given. I definitely agree with you that Gordon's always been efficient, right? He just doesn't need the volume to be what I would say quality in terms of points. My concern is $30 million implies you're a top player. And I'm not saying Gordon Hayward isn't capable. In Utah, he had shown he was getting there, and then the Boston stuff has derailed him. He's still a younger guy. It's not like he can't come back, so to speak. But I mean, to the horrific injuries Marvin pointed out earlier, it's tough. And honestly, I'm just going to transition. Speaking of injuries, Klay Thompson out. Tore his ACL last year. Now ruptured his Achilles. And Achilles, as we've talked about, folks, Kevin Durant is trying to come back from it. The great Kobe Bryant had an Achilles injury and he was never the same. People do not come back the same. So I understand for the Warriors, they really had to transition. So they drafted James Wiseman, which makes sense. So if you don't know, guys, he's 7'1", He's about 250, and he's a center. And realistically, that's what Golden State is so far behind on, even though they're light years ahead. They've always been very bad about dealing with the paint. The only time they had a good paint situation was with Andrew Bogut. And when Bogut left, and because they needed to pick up KD, they had to play Draymond at the center a lot of the times. And that wasn't great for them. So getting Wiseman was the smart pick. I think it's the fix it now pick, not necessarily the best pick. But I understand you got fans here in the Bay. They're not what I would consider like the strongest fans. So you got to keep them around. So I think Wiseman's a good pick because with Klay out, Curry is going to have to do a lot. So I anticipate you're going to see him back in that MVP talk because he's going to have to do it. And he's capable in that sense. I expect Curry to average 32 points per game. I really think he's going to get that type of opportunity because they really don't have much else right now. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. It's when you look at what they got right now, they have Wiggins, who's a fine player, but he's never had the motor or the drive that's necessary. Andrew Wiggins is one of those stories where he could be a perennial all-star if he actually put in the effort, but he just doesn't seem to be there. So I think you're going to get 20 points per game out of Wiggins, and Curry's going to have to be at that 32 point per game for them to even make it into like the sixth best team in the West. They're not anywhere, and it's really unfortunate because before Klay got injured, people were discussing they've potentially been the second or third best. So they're picking up Wiseman. It's logical to try to compete. They had to do what they had to do. I think for Minnesota, picking up Anthony Edwards was a safe pick. LaMelo is the long-term pick, and I do think he has, a lot of people, I'll say this about LaMelo Ball. He's 6'7", people, and he's going to turn 19 when the season starts. I mean, this kid's still growing. We don't know how big he could get. Now, yeah, he's 190 pounds, but he's 18 years old. Of course, he's 190 pounds. So I'm very curious. I think this was a great pick, to be honest, even though I just said, Jordan, yada, yada, yada. But I'm not going to give him credit outside of, LaMelo slipped to him. And I think you take that future project pick and you run with it because realistically, who are they going to take? Patrick Williams? That's not going to help. So I personally don't think there was a lot of draft picks to talk about. We talked about the top three. I think they have a lot of relevance, but I would like to talk about the free agency. Marvin, can you tell us what's been happening in Lakerland? Because a lot of things happened over this weekend.
Woo. Well, I'll tell you, the Lakers didn't rest on their laurels. They definitely stacked up over the weekend. They definitely lost some. They lost some guys in free agency. They lost JaVale McGee. They lost Dwight Howard. They lost Rajon Rondo. Rajon Rondo went to the Atlanta Hawks on a 2-year deal, $15 million. Dwight Howard, after tweeting saying that he wants to stay in the purple and gold, he wants to remain a Laker for life. Removed the tweet, and not an hour later finds out that he signs a contract in Philly. So he departs. And so the Lakers, Rob Pelinka, didn't sit on his ass. What he did was he just made moves. He went out and got Montrezl Harrell, took Montrezl Harrell from the LA Clippers, signing him to a two-year deal. The former sixth man of the year. So They added another depth piece there. They actually went younger at that position. They added Wesley Matthews. Wesley Matthews has played with the Dallas Mavericks for a few years and the Milwaukee Bucks. Perimeter shooter, versatile wing defender. So the Lakers, they decided they wanted to go younger. They also added Marc Gasol, another big body. I mean, we all know that he's up there in age. He's moving a little slower now. I mean, he's like a caveman, but that's a big body you can throw at Nikola Jokic. And so the Lakers knew that, so they took advantage of that signing. The Lakers also re-signed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and they also re-signed Markieff Morris. So the Lakers, as currently constructed, look like the team still to beat in the West. I mean, they have loaded up. When you look at how they've made these moves, Rob Pelinka over the years has said, I don't want to rest on my laurels, just winning a championship. He kind of followed this example from Kobe. He's always continued to make the team better. So adding these pieces, I'm very interested to see how this team is going to to look, chemistry wise, just being so new. Because it takes, as you guys know, it takes a while to build up chemistry when you get free agents to sign into the team, to buy into the culture. And I can't believe I'm forgetting this, guys. The Lakers had another big signing. Can't forget this. Dennis Schroeder. You can't forget Dennis Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder having a career year last year, playing with Chris Paul in the first round. I think he's a great piece that the Lakers added. Definitely a dynamic player who can give you valuable minutes off the bench. Perimeter shooting, he shot, I believe it was over 45% from three in the postseason. So the Lakers looked at that and they said, we need that kind of level of consistency. So the Lakers in the West seem to be like the team that's added the most pieces in the last few days, while the Clippers on the other end have added Serge Ibaka. We can see why he wanted to sign there. Serge Ibaka wanted to play with, quote, fun guy again. So it's going to be interesting, that rivalry. But I think it was more hilarious, Richie, seeing Patrick Beverley's reaction. Tony, I know you saw that. He was pissed. But I mean, guys, you can't. I mean, what do you think? I mean, after all these moves, you think they're still the team to beat?
Yeah, I have to go with the team to beat. But I'll say this: they got better and worse. I'd say they got better overall, but worse in some areas. I think one of the things that made them so effective was having the big bodies and having the guys like Dwight Howard and having that veteran leadership. Now, I love Marc Gasol. I think, in terms of basketball skills, Marc Gasol is significantly better than Dwight Howard. But, one thing Dwight did do, as you mentioned, Marv, one guy that is going to be a big deal to them is Jokic, right? The Joker. And Dwight was very good at playing bully basketball, and he did a great job of getting on him and Anthony Davis and getting on him and staying on him. And Mark's not what he used to be in that sense, and he doesn't have that youthfulness that like Dwight still can kind of offer. But again, I think from an offensive standpoint, no comparison. Marc Gasol significantly better. And I think from an offensive standpoint in general, they got better. I think Dennis Schroeder's the biggest deal of free agency, quite frankly. I think that was a huge pickup by Rob Pelinka. I think for the Clippers, I'll say this. I don't think the Clippers, they made some small free agent pickups. It's really not worth discussing, but I'll say this much. I don't think the Clippers are going to win or lose based on the free agency. I honestly don't even think Harrell is going to be whether or not they win or lose. I think it's a big pickup for the Lakers, a free pickup, so to speak. But I don't believe it's going to impact them. It really comes down to, will Paul George and Kawhi get their shit together, quite frankly? And if they do, they can still compete with the Lakers. They can. But I definitely think LA is the favorite. Side note, the Dwight Howard thing wasn't on Dwight. It was actually on LA. They rescinded their verbal agreement with him because they need to make room money-wise to get Marc Gasol. That's why Dwight did not end up getting come back, and he ended up signing a veterans minimum with Philadelphia, which I think is a very interesting placement for him. I'm very much looking forward to seeing Philadelphia. I think Daryl Morey is my favorite general manager. He's making a lot of moves over there in Philly. And he actually dumped the Horford contract, which was huge. Elton Brand made a huge mistake and signed Al Horford to $30+ million a year, and they were to dump that salary finally. So I think the last thing I'd like to say about the NBA, and then we'll let Tony and Justin kind of chime in on anything they want to talk about. I'm very, very curious about AD. So Anthony Davis, for you folks at home, he has not signed a deal. And the rumor, and I love talking about rumors, the rumor is he's waiting to see if Giannis is going to be doing a Supermax this year or not. Because if Giannis is, well, he's going to do a 1+1. And what that means, or if Giannis doesn't, he's going to do a 1+1. If Giannis doesn't sign a Supermax, next year he will be a free agent and he can go anywhere. So if he does do that, the rumor is Anthony Davis wants to do a 1+1. And then LeBron and Anthony want to try to get Giannis on board to join the Lakers and basically blow up the team and just keep those three. Now, that's the rumor. Whether that'll happen or not, we'll see. I firmly do see that as a possibility because the two rumors are he'll do a 1+1 or he's going to do a 3-year to match LeBron's years on his contract. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. I'm very curious. If Giannis does join the Lakers, I mean, I don't even know if I watch the NBA anymore. I'm not a huge fan of this like super team that athletes just communicate and try to join each other. Like I don't like that shit.
I'll be watching. I would love that.
I know Marvin will be through. I'm an 80s baby, man. I loved watching teams. And again, I respect the athletes. They deserve to be happy and do what they want to do. And, you know, LeBron has been a centerfold for getting that to the position where they're all in now. But I loved watching, and again, yes, there was only 3 teams, but I loved watching these teams organically get built. Like the Golden State Warriors pre-Kevin Durant. Like I love watching someone just find talent effectively and not just like, oh, well, I'm buddies with this guy and he happens to be really good, so we're just going to go to Miami. You know, things like, if Giannis joins, it's no fault to the Lakers. You know, kudos to them. They'll win like 2 more championships with that team. And if they win this year, that means potentially they go 4 in a row. I could see that happening. I'm not trying to say it wouldn't. I think it 1,000% would for obvious reasons. But I very much don't like to see little markets go under like that. So it'll be very curious to see what ends up happening. I'm also very surprised about the whole Houston situation for those of you at home. Both superstars who are best friends in real life went to elementary school together. James Harden, Russell Westbrook no longer want to play with each other. They're still best friends, but they both don't want to play with each other and they both don't want to be in Houston. So Houston is going to have to try to figure out something. But Marvin, as you saw, there are some draft picks that kind of just went to the wayside. So I just don't see how you can dump off James Harden when you're having significantly inferior players picking up, 4 first-round draft picks over the next 4 years, Marv? I think that's what it was. Pretty crazy news. It was, I mean, they're trying, Milwaukee's doing whatever they can to keep Giannis. But my goodness, that just kind of put a asterisk around all the future trades of the next couple of years, because that's what is going to be held as the standard, even though it shouldn't be. It's a pretty insane thing. But I have one question for Tony and Justin, and then Marvin, you can kind of cap this thing off. What would you be looking for most in this upcoming season? Because you might not have watched this last year in the bubble, and they're going for round 2s basically. What are you looking for? What do you want the NBA to do to pick it up during COVID? Because the NFL, guys, has only lost 10% viewership. The NBA has lost over 50% of its viewership during COVID. So what do you think is missing?
Well, number one, you know, I'm very curious to see what the Lakers end up doing. You guys talked about that a little earlier in the show. But yeah, I want to see if they're still the team to beat. And as of right now, they are still the team to beat, right? Because they're just loading up and getting ready. You know, Harden and Westbrook, they tried to do this once before. You know, they were drafted on the same team, I believe, in OKC. And that didn't work out, right? So, you know, I think they thought that maybe they could figure it out because they're dominant players, but that's just the thing. They're 2 dominant players that really don't work well together. So it's just one of those things. So they have to, you know, work that through. So I like to see where that storyline goes. You know, what happens with Harden. I really want to see, Giannis is holding off signing anything right now. And I like the story that you did with Anthony Davis. Giannis hasn't signed an extension. I really want to see how that plays out. You know, this season is very open for me to watch. And if Giannis does go to the Lakers, I'm right there with Marvin. I'll be watching the NBA. I don't like the whole super team thing, but it is, you know, something to watch. It's like Ocean's 11, right? You have all these stars in the same movie, and it's just like, this might not be as good as I think it's gonna be, but you still watch it, and guess what? It was great, you know? So the Lakers, they're gonna do their damn thing, and, you know, hopefully people watch to see what happens. But for them to pick up, you know, more viewership, I can't answer that question for you. I think that, you know, a lot of people, you know, might not watch the NBA just because they're trying to make a statement about what matters to them in life. And some people don't really coordinate with that or correlate with that. But, you know, that's just my opinion. If the NFL were allowed to have people kneel and they showed people kneeling, they would have lost more than 10% viewership. So I'm just going to be honest that I think that's what it has to deal with. People don't want to see Black Lives Matter on the court or all these different statements, even though it is very important to project out. I think people are not going to mix with that, and that's probably why they lost a lot of their viewership. But once again, that's just my opinion. No one's talked to me. No one said anything. I'm just going out on a limb and telling it like it is.
Didn't catch it from your beat?
Yeah, because that's the world we live in. You know, that's what I see. I put 2 and 2 together. NFL only lost 10%. They don't have Black Lives Matter blasted everywhere. People aren't kneeling. You know, they haven't lost viewership. The NBA has lost drastic viewership, and they're just on a campaign to change the world and the mindset of people with systemic racism in the world that we live in.
Justin, how about you? What do you think the NBA could do?
Well, yeah, I think trying to get back on a regular schedule. I don't know what the product's going to look like, though, crunching these two, massive seasons together. And there's a lot to what Tony said that I think rings true. I think media is a very dangerous beast. And depending on the times and what's going on and the mindset of the viewership mass, you could sink. And it doesn't take anything away from what the NBA is trying to do. But right now, Black Lives Matter means a million things. And that's the media's fault, because we know what it truly stands for. But that's been lost for months. So right now, anything that doesn't involve the crap of 2020 is going to be something that people are going to be feeding on. And that's unfortunate for people who are trying to make such great changes. But I think they need to keep doing it. I think they just need to keep making exciting basketball. As far as COVID goes, stay on it. I think they did better than the NFL did, in my opinion. A quick take on the whole MJ deal. It doesn't sound like he necessarily is a pro owner, but I think a move, I keep bringing this damn movie up, but like watch Moneyball, man. I think a move like that and making offers that aren't 120 million, but are a little more reasonable with a stronger overall lineup. I think that is something for him to look into. Maybe he needs to get an accountant or some, whatever that guy was that Billy Bean had that started chirping in his ear saying, hey, stop dropping these big ticket contracts and get some real stable basketball going, and then use your knowledge to make this program amazing. I think he can do that on that side of things. That man knows basketball, but I don't know, finances, maybe not so much.
Yeah, I mean, Justin, accountant something. I think the best way to describe it from my perspective of not knowing him and not necessarily knowing the situation of what he goes through as a person is just when you're an uber talented person, everything you did and everything you worked is your process, and that's what it is. But you have to understand you were successful because of that. Like, not everyone can do what you did. Or, like Kobe Bryant's a prime example of that. He was cutthroat and he just shoved and pushed people. So it was just too much sometimes. And I think that's the problem with Mike is like, he doesn't have a good understanding of talent because he just focuses on what he thinks like, oh, I like how he plays this way. But that doesn't mean the player necessarily is going to be good. It's just he sees something that could be dominant and then expects it to work. Kwame Brown being an example. I think LaMelo was actually a good choice. But Marvin, would you please close this out? And then we'll get going to the NFL with Tony.
Yeah. Real quick, Tony, you took the words right out of my mouth, man. I don't want to spend any more time than I need to on it. Like you said, that percentage, 10%, 50%. I think the bottom line is players aren't going to shut up and dribble. And I think later on the show, when we get to players that have had a significant impact on their respective sports, I think you all will know who I'm talking about. And we'll get to that later, but we want to wrap up NBA and get to NFL. You're listening to The Wire. We'll be right back.
Are you tired of the mundane one subject, one point of view podcast? Have you been searching for a show that combines comedy, games, current events, and hot new up-and-coming artists? Well, look no further. The H2G podcast has everything you need to start your week out right. So what are you waiting for? Stream previous seasons now at h2gpodcast.com. The H2G Podcast, Mondays at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Available at all social media platforms near you.
Welcome back to The Wire, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be talking about the NFL. We're going to do a real quick, I did it too quick, recap of last week's games. So on Thursday night, we had the Seahawks take care of the Cardinals, 28-21. You had the Lions put up a egg against the Panthers, 20-0. You had the Steelers take care of Jacksonville Jaguars, 27-3. You had the Patriots lose to the Texans, 27-20. You had the Titans. Woo boy, that king came through on that run, 30-24 against the Ravens. The Eagles and the Browns. The Browns, they got out of there, 22-17. The Falcons, where were they? Nowhere to be seen. They're looking up. I can't see no Falcons flying. 9 points. The Saints, 24. No Drew Brees. Washington 20, the Bengals 9. More to that story later. Chargers 34, Jets 28. The Broncos scored 20. The Dolphins finally lose. They only get 13. The Cowboys 31, the Vikings 28. The Packers lose to the Colts 31-34. The Chiefs took care of business against the Raiders 35-31 in an entertaining Sunday night game. I'll tell you, Monday night game, as of right now, the Rams and the Buccaneers are 17-17, but you'll know by the time you watch this how that game actually ended. So I got some things to talk about real quick before we get into take it or defer. Something to note, the Bengals game only had 9 points. Well, something else really bad happened. Joe Burrow got hurt. He will be out for the remainder of the season. Terrible injury for the Bengals to have happened when they had this prolific quarterback rookie come in and just, turned it around a little. Not a lot, but turned it around a little. The 3-7 Bengals would be tied for second place in the NFC East if they were in the NFC East at 3-7. That's just how bad that division is. Something to note for Thursday night's game, Baltimore and the Ravens. We had Ravens head coach, according to CBS Sports.com, there's going to be some key people missing, ladies and gentlemen. We have Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins have tested positive and will not be available for Thursday night's game against the Steelers. Gus Edwards will get the start. He rushed 130 yards against the Steelers in Week 17 in the 2019 season. Additionally, defensive tackle Brandon Williams will also be placed on the team's reserve COVID list. So, with that, and I'm sure we can talk about more, but we're going to go straight to my main man, Richie. Are you going to take it or defer the Cardinals versus the Seahawks?
Ooh, oh man, that was a game. You know what? I'll take it. Let's take it.
All right.
Let's take it. So, guys. One thing I can say full-heartedly is DK Metcalf needs to learn to catch the damn ball. I don't know what else to say, Marv. I don't know how else to put it. We talked about his greatness and how I think he's such a unique guy, and he could easily become, and I don't want to say Megatron, but he could become his own type of just dominance just because of his physical gifts. But that boy can't catch a football when it hits him in the hands. I don't know how else to put it. He's got some bad hands. This was a hell of a game. I really enjoyed watching. Like, I love Kyler Murray, man. Like, what a beast. I think this kid's got all the talent in the world. And I think from the quarterbacks, he had two solid performances from them. Neither of them really stood out. I don't think any of them did great. It was, no turnovers from that perspective. They were fine on that for not throwing any picks. But I think Kyler needs some help. I'm just going to say it. When you look at this game, Seattle was able to control the time of possession. They had 160 yards rushing, and I think the Cardinals had like 50. I mean, it was literally triple the rushing yards. It was just really challenging. Arizona reminds me of way back when Kurt Warner was on Arizona, and it was his first Larry Fitz, and then they got Carson Palmer back like down the road, and they started this aerial assault, and I think that's what they have. They have this. You got Larry Fitzgerald, you got DeAndre Hopkins, you got Kirk, you got a lot of great talents, and it's just they have to balance their offense more. Kenyon Drake's just not getting it done. He averaged I'm looking at it now. He averaged 2.6 yards per carry. That's not going to get you anywhere in the National Football League. I think the Cardinals are close to being a great team. They have an explosive offense, and I don't know if they still do after this week, but they had the number one offense in terms of yards and etc. But I just think Seattle got lucky. Their defense is terrible, and Arizona just didn't put up the points that they're normally able to. But what I will say is this score, 28-21, is not indicative of what it should have been, because Metcalf dropped 2 touchdowns. This could have been a much bigger lead. I think the biggest takeaway again is that Arizona's rushing attack has to improve, or they're not going to get anywhere. Even though they're 6-4, and it's an extremely awesome division as opposed to the NFC East. I just don't see Arizona getting in even as a wild card at this point. They don't have a balanced offense, and they're going to live and die by Kyler Murray. And again, I think he's a stud, but he's a young quarterback, and you can't expect a young quarterback to just lead a team with no rushing at all. Usually when you see a quarterback who's young or not as productive as they could be, or lacking the leadership and the experience, they tend to run the ball more, right? They kind of keep it out of their hands, and they're not giving Kyler the opportunity to use his legs and use his athleticism in the right way. They're relying on it as opposed to taking advantage of it and doing like bootlegs and like rollouts and playing off play action, and that's where they'd really shine. If they could get some play action going for DeAndre and Larry Fitzgerald and let Kyler use his legs, I think they'd be a lot more successful. But honestly, this was an important one for Seattle. They've been on a slide. People have basically been calling them fraudulent lately, and they've been dying and living and dying by Russell Wilson. Their defense, quite frankly, regardless of the rushing that I referred to, they stepped up enough to get the job done. Seattle's defense still has to show me something. They're terrible. They're still on pace to have the most yards given up in an entire NFL season. So overall, both the teams, good teams by record, but big holes, and I don't see them as contenders.
All right, my main man, Marvin. Thank you, Richie, for that. Marvin, do you take or defer the Cowboys versus the Vikings?
I'm going to defer that. The hell with that division. Both teams are one is scrambling to make the playoffs, and the other one is trying to put the team on the weight on the back of one shoulder, and that's Dalvin Cook. And I don't want it. I'm sorry, I don't want that game.
All right, no problem. Do you take or defer the Packers versus the Colts?
No. Okay.
I'll give you a good one then. Do you take or defer the Chiefs versus the Raiders?
No. The game I want is coming up very soon. I hope you get to it. Because I can't wait.
Okay. Do you take or defer the Titans versus the Ravens?
I don't want that one.
You don't want that one? Do you take or defer the Patriots versus the Texans?
No.
Okay. Do you take or defer the Steelers versus the Jaguars?
No, I don't want it. You know what game I want? Get to it. Come on. Come with it. Come on, Tony.
Do you take or defer the Eagles versus the Browns?
Give me it.
Okay.
Give me it. Wow. Okay. All right. Because I don't really have. See, y'all would be surprised. I don't really have too many good things to say about the Browns. I know they came out with a win, but I got to chop up both teams today. All right. Let's start with Carson Wentz. Okay, Carson Wentz was sacked 5 times, threw 2 interceptions. Carson Wentz currently right now is the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. He has been sacked 44 times, folks. Justin, Tony, Richie, 44 times. That's how many times this man has been hit. He leads the league in interceptions. I mean, if you look at the Eagles as a whole, we discussed this last week. We said the Eagles were trending in the wrong direction. Yeah, they're getting guys coming back that are healthy. You got a Miles Sanders that just came back. You got Alshon Jeffrey that's still trying to get his feet underneath him. Zach Ertz is coming off IR, so they still got a reliable tight end in Dallas Goedert. But when you look at just the piss poor play of Carson Wentz over just the entirety of the season, I mean, it's just really surprising why Doug Peterson, countless times, post-game interviews, as they ask him, did you consider a quarterback change towards the end? And he says, no, we didn't really consider that. Basically, I want to translate it for you all out there, Justin, Tony, Richie. What he's basically saying to you is that, no, we didn't want to win this week, and we don't really plan on winning next week either. I think we're good with the quarterback that we have, the mediocre play that he's displaying, because one play, I don't know if you all watched it or caught highlights of this game, but Carson Wentz was under duress. And instead of just throwing the ball away like we discussed a week ago, he just gifts it to the cornerback in their own red zone for a pick 6. I couldn't believe it. And to chop the Browns up, the Browns played great on defense. Amazing, like we've said all year, like Richie has said on this show, Myles Garrett, even though he wasn't present for this game, the defense stepped up. They forced sacks. They forced turnovers. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. That defense looked like the defense of the 80s. They looked like a defense that looked like they are hungry for the playoffs, like they want that wild card spot. Where I do chop them up, folks, y'all out there on this panel, Baker Mayfield is not getting the job done. He's simply not getting the job done. He's doing almost enough, but they're not winning games because of him. And if you're a Browns fan, or if you're a football aficionado, you're looking at his level of play and you're thinking to yourself, that's not going to get it done in the postseason. That's not going to get it done in the wild card. Because if he can't put games together where he's efficient, where he's completing either over 50% of his passes, they're not going to win football games. They're relying too heavily on the run when Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt is paying them well. It's doing them dividends, but still, like when you put that much weight on 2 running backs and you don't have an Odell Beckham and you're trying to mix the ball around and throw it and you're not getting the ball to a Jarvis Landry, I just think that the Browns are just getting by each and every week, and they're really going to get exposed. But I mean, you can't take away from the fact that they won this game. But Tony, it was hard to watch because I mean, the Browns at any moment offensively, they're just inefficient, and I think those inefficiencies are they haven't started to, but they're starting to get more exposed as we start to get into the postseason, because the Browns are fighting for that wild card spot. The Steelers are right at the top. The Browns have proven that they are playing better football than the Ravens currently, but they have to understand that Baker Mayfield is going to have to do more than he is right now, because they beat a hapless Eagles team. And if you look at the Eagles right now, it's currently constructed, I think that a lot of teams could take advantage of their ineptitude at offense. So I don't see a bright side for either team. The Eagles are not going to win that sorry division, and the Browns are hanging on for dear life. The defense will take them as far as And the defense will take them a long way, but they're not going anywhere because of Baker Mayfield.
I'm with you, man. Nick Chubb. If they didn't have him that game, they don't win that game.
No, they don't have him. They don't win. They don't have either or they don't win. That's the problem.
All I have to say is the Eagles need to be thankful, even though they lost. They need to be thankful that Myles Garrett wasn't on the field, because he would have ate for days after the performance that he would have put on, because Carson Wentz and that offensive line, that was the most horrific game. He looked lost out there. I'm surprised they even put up the points that they did put up. And it was just because of turnovers in the red zone, and then they were able to get one pass off. Go ahead, Marvin. You say what you need to say.
I want to wrap this up. Justin, Tony, Richie, let's get in the time traveling machine for a second. Do you remember Donovan McNabb?
Yes.
Yeah, Chunky Soup.
Oh, okay, right, Chunky Soup. What do you think that they would be saying about him now if he was playing like this, the way Carson Wentz is playing?
Oh, well, you know what they'd be saying. He'd be benched. He wouldn't even be playing.
I mean, you wanted to bench him when he was playing. To be the moment he didn't start performing, they wanted to bench him.
It's just so yeah, exactly. So I don't understand. So a level of culpability and accountability doesn't exist with Carson Wentz. But it existed with Donovan McNabb. I just wanted to get that out there. I just wanted to go back in time for a second.
No, I feel you. This is
because it screams volumes to me, Tony. You know what I'm talking about.
Hey, I know where you're going. The only thing that I can think of, and this is the only thing, and it's petty as hell, but with how bad they suck, they still lead that division. They're tied, but because of the tiebreaker, they lead that division. So if they were 1 in whatever the hell the record would be, there definitely should be a change. And if there wasn't a change, then I would walk down that path with you about why there isn't a change, because I know they have somebody on the bench that can give them a little bit more than what Carson Wentz is giving them. They do. You're the worst with interceptions and turnovers. You're the worst when it comes to being sacked. Just because you're leading the division, and maybe that's the reason why they don't make the changes, because they're comfortable with Wentz. Are you comfortable with all of what he presents for your team? I mean, yes, you almost had a chance to win, but we're talking about something else here. You need to have prolific players in place to step up when something happens. And that's what great teams do. They have a backup plan, okay? The Steelers didn't have a backup plan last year, but you know what they did have? They had a head coach that knew what the hell he was doing. And I believed in Duck Hodges a lot more than I believed in Mason Rudolph, because what Mike T did was he put him in position to be successful. Sean Payton put his team in a position to be successful. You can fight all you want. Jameis Winston or Hill, which one are you going to start? At least they had those options. At least they had those options to be able to go, well, hey, we could let the guy that throws a lot of touchdowns start, or the guy that throws a lot of interceptions start. Well, that's the same person. Well, then let's just have the other guy start that is a prolific player, a dynamite player, a slash type player. He reminds me of Cordell Stewart, but better. That's what Hill reminds me of, because he can do so much. So, I know where you're going, Marvin, and I don't really want to go off on a tangent, even though I just did. But yeah, if they were losing and he was still playing, I would definitely have that argument with you, and I'd be right next to you along with that argument. And with anybody that wants to debate it, it's definitely something else. The reason why, things aren't getting done. But as of right now, I think because they're still leading in the division, they probably want to keep Wentz in, and that's on them. You're going to live by that, and guess what? You're going to die by that. Getting over to you, Justin. Do you take or defer, and then we'll move on? I might as well just give it to you, even though I don't want to. I'm going to give you something different. You want the Titans and the Ravens?
I want the Patriots and the Texans.
you just gonna tell me you won't even let
You already
me
said it.
Okay, go ahead. Patriots and the Texans. You take it or defer, you're gonna take.
I'm gonna take it. Well, I knew that I just couldn't keep grabbing the Steelers game, so I was like, that's one I could kind of speak to. I can't believe that this is all going down with New England because I, for a long time, was on the other side of the argument that Tom Brady is not that big of a key to success. He's a big key to their success, but he's not that big. I don't know if it is a mindset deal or if they just what the hell is going on in New England. But I don't know. Even Cam Newton, 365 yards and 1 touchdown. I really don't even have a lot to say about the game. I don't know what's going on with the New England Patriots and losing to the Texans, who are 3-7. It's just like Richie had said earlier in this season. It's all downhill for New England. Maybe a good offseason and some Belichick bows would do something for them, but I don't know. Maybe I've been wrong this whole time, and Tom Brady was the key to success.
Listen, I'll say this, and we can have this argument at a later date, but I think that if Tom Brady was on the Patriots, I think the morale of the team and the mindset and the prestigiousness of the team would be much different than it is right now, and that might give you a couple wins. But the Tom Brady that has weapons with the Buccaneers is still trying to find his way. So it was really a mix of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, in my personal opinion, because you see how they are apart. Now, Tom definitely has a better record, or I should say, the Buccaneers have a better record than the New England Patriots. I will give you that part, but if Tom Brady was on the New England Patriots right now, I think they probably have 2 more wins than they have. So they'd be right at 6 wins. But they still wouldn't be the Patriots of the past. That is long gone. See you later, out the door. Unless, they would have brought in some other players. We don't know how that would have, deterred or made it different. But, for that reason alone, for me, I don't think it would have made that much of a difference. Just 2 games is the difference there. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for sticking with us for the NFL and the NBA. We're going to move on to players that have changed the sport for the better or for worse. Okay, so what I mean by this is I'm talking about Wilt Chamberlain type players where the league actually has to implement rules for you. I'm talking about Tiger Woods type players where you change how much money that people are making just because you brought in fans. I'm talking about Jim Brown type players where you create a culture for a team and an organization that flips that organization completely over. There's so many other ones that are there, Serena and Venus. But I'm curious to see what my panel of friends have to say, because they're going to laugh on the direction that I went. And I don't want to kick it off with a laugh. I want to end it or be in the middle for the laugh. So I want to go with Marvin if he's comfortable with it, because I kind of know where he's going when he was talking earlier about people that have made a difference. And I guarantee it's a difference for the better. Go ahead and take it away, my brother.
Well, I'm glad you had to hold me back a little bit per the last conversation. You've had to do that a few times on this show and this episode already. So I thank you for that, Tony, and I thank you for y'all's patience out there. I'll tone it down, but y'all know where I'm coming from. And like I said earlier in the show, this individual, who I believe has had a tremendous impact on his respective sport, who is taking the hits, who has stood up in the face of systemic racism, who won't, and I repeat, will not shut up and dribble. That man is LeBron James. You can mention the Tiger Woodses, You can mention the Michael Jordans. But when you look at LeBron James and when he's done, it makes me emotional thinking about it because of the impact that he's had on youth, the youth here in the state of Ohio with the I Promise Foundation, from everything from him speaking out when he didn't have to. LeBron James is a made man. LeBron James is one of the greatest players of all time, Mount Rushmore if you put him there. But when you think about the impact that he's had on the game, not only just on the court, but off the court, being a model citizen off the court, just being a leader, showing you that there are things that are bigger than basketball, that you can have that same level of contrition and focus on your career to make a difference. LeBron James has been that voice. He's been more than a voice. He's been a voice for the Black community. I will say that proudly. He's been a voice for the NBA community. He's been a voice for sports. He's inspired kids and people all over the world by just being the guy that he is, being the giving person that he's been, sharing the stage, lifting others up, bringing others up, showing that you can have a foundation with even your enemy on and off the court. What he's been able to do recently, with voting, with I think it's every vote matters. I think more than a vote, getting arenas and stadiums to, especially in LA, to open up venues for people to vote, paying the bond of ex-cons for just so they'd be able to have the ability to vote. Just these things speak volumes to me as LeBron James, that he's made a tremendous impact on the game of basketball and this sport. Because when you think of basketball now, you think of LeBron James. You think about what he's been able to accomplish. And I think that what he's accomplished off the court, as much as I love what he's done on the court, some amazing things, y'all. But the most amazing thing that he's done is speak out for us. That's what he's done. When I seen him take a knee when the bubble started, y'all, that's what meant the most to me. That's what I meant earlier at the top of this show. That's what I was talking about. Because when you look at 50% and you look at 10%, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. Because not only has LeBron James, but other players led by example with him, stood and hold arms together with him. He didn't have to do that. That was a sacrifice. That being the face of the league. He did that. Regardless of how you all feel out there, Black lives still matter. And it mattered to LeBron James. And he wanted to let everyone know that it still mattered to him, regardless of how much money he's had, how much he's accomplished. It didn't matter. Lives over rings. LeBron James.
Yeah, Marvin, I like that pick a lot. It resonates with me because, it's if you know anything about sports, Muhammad Ali is one of those figures that stood by for what he wanted and what the community needed. And whether you agree with it or not, that's entirely up to you, but it meant a lot for other people. Another great person was Jackie Robinson, which is a person that could be also on this list. That it took 80 years before African-American even played in the major leagues. It even played in the major league. So what he was able to do at that time in 1940, it's pretty astonishing. Michael Jordan is a great talent, but Michael Jordan didn't want to be political. If you remember watching The Last Dance, he even said it in there. He wasn't big on trying to be a political or an activist or anything like that. And that's okay. That's just who you are. But sometimes when you're put in that position, you have to stand sometimes because you are what people look up to. That's what you are. That's what you signed up to do. So I like your pick a lot, and I respect it. So moving on, let's go with Richie.
This is
my brother.
Oh yeah, I don't mind. This is tough for me because my answer is almost always Wilt Chamberlain and Muhammad Ali under any circumstances. So I'm going to point out what I originally had planned and then why I'm going to go back to Muhammad Ali. I originally planned on Wayne Gretzky, actually. I think Wayne Gretzky transcends his sport far more in terms of what he did for the sport. Maybe sans Tiger Woods. That's probably the only person I think is similar. So beyond the fact that he is the great one, and I could go over his ridiculous accolades, he won 9 MVPs, 10-time league scorer, the fastest to reach all goals and points within the career. He still maintains all those records. He's the only player to get 2,000 regular season points and 3,000 points in one season. He's won 4 championships with the Edmonton Oilers alone. The biggest reason why I would say for him as an athlete and what he did for his sport is after he was traded from Canada to the United States, big deal because it wasn't, he went to the Kings, the Los Angeles Kings in 1988. And from 1988 up until I think 2011, the NHL expanded from 21 teams to 31 teams. So 10 teams joined the United States after Gretzky got traded. And within the first 5 years of him getting traded, they expanded to 27 teams. So the league got 6 new teams. That to me speaks volumes to his impact, that San Jose, Anaheim, Tampa Bay, Florida, and the Phoenix Coyotes all these cities were just like, we need to get into this hockey thing because of how quickly and how dominant Wayne Gretzky was even in the US. So I would say for a sports athlete, Wayne Gretzky. But to Marvin's conversation, I have to go back to Muhammad Ali, as I always generally do, because to me, I think the most courageous thing I've ever seen an athlete do is what he did, which was April 28th, 1967. The United States was at war with Vietnam, and he said, I'm not going to the war. He got drafted. He said, not happening. So they sentenced him to 5 years in prison. They fined him $10,000, and he was banned from boxing for 3 years. Now, just so you people know, the case was appealed and he did not have to go to prison, but the ban stayed in place. So the man sacrificed, when we talk about a sacrifice, the man sacrificed his career for his religious beliefs. A lot of people try to view it as he was afraid to go to the war, and it had nothing to do with that, right? I mean, what's what Marvin was talking about earlier. Honestly, he said, I ain't got no quarrel with Viet Cong. They've never done anything to me. So to me, that was what I consider the first athlete to truly kind of recognize, like, why would I attack somebody who's done nothing to my people? And he really did take a stand in that moment. And it also, a lot of people don't realize the hardships he went through due to that. He actually was very much poor. I mean, if you've seen some of his documentaries, he ended up, actually, Joe Frazier was very nice enough to help him out. Otherwise, he would have been even lower place. So the man sacrificed a lot for his life and his beliefs, and beyond his accolades in the ring, we're not going to get into those. I think he really did show what an athlete should be doing in activism, because in these periods of times you had guys like Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain and all these athletes who are already massive stars, but none of them did any sort of activism or social awareness or social justice until Muhammad Ali. So to me, he's always going to be the GOAT for that reason alone. So I'm going to stick with Muhammad Ali. I wanted to go differently, but Muhammad Ali.
And that you already know what I said about that, because I said it after Marvin said his part about Jackie Robinson and also Muhammad Ali. So you know where I feel on that. So very good choice there, Richie. Justin Duvall, my brother. Let's get it.
Well, I was gonna not pick a wrestler, but then I thought about it and I had to pick a wrestler. And we had our GOAT wrestling conversation last week, and that was fun. And this man's name didn't really float around that conversation, even out of my mouth. because in ring and sometimes even on the mic, he's not the GOAT. However, he came into his sport at a time where the sport needed a revival, needed a revolution, needed a new face in wrestling terms, and needed something to follow. And what he's done since then, in ring, outer ring, and with his career in totality, has been astonishing. And I'm talking about a man who only needs 2 words to describe him, and that's ruthless aggression. John Cena. In ring, he's fun to watch. He is talented. He's not by any means the most technical wrestler or one of the best, necessarily wrestlers. He plays his characters so well. He's constantly in control of the crowd, whether they want to be or not. He can spearhead his own hate campaign like nobody else. So his accolades in that and in wrestling speak for themselves. That's not why he's my pick for today's conversation. Even though 16-time world champ, he's tied with Ric Flair for the most. He's got 5 of the United States champs. I mean, a lot of great accolades. Not why I picked him. He has another accolade that to me speaks volumes. He has the world record, I think, right now for the most wishes made for the Make-A-Wish Foundation at 650 wishes. Through his career and his beliefs and his mottos, he's been able to capture millions of kids, probably thousands for sure, hundreds of thousands for sure of kids' attention, and especially those kids that need encouragement, like never give up or fight the fight. And not to mention, I believe, Richie, you probably help me out on this. I think he has a lot to do with spearheading the tribute to the troops and sending the whole wrestling campaign over to the places where our soldiers are stationed and giving them a show that's usually the card. Now that they started televising, the card's huge. You got like Taker going over, all the greats showing back up. So to me, John Cena is never even somebody that I support when I'm watching as a fan from the outside. It's just, he's been a solid rock. I appreciate who he is and the way he's maintained his composure as a professional over the years and the successful career he's had. I think I didn't like him as a film actor at first, honestly, but he's kind of grown on me. I enjoy seeing his film work now, and just all around, what an amazing person. So as far as done a lot for the sport, maybe he hasn't done as much for wrestling as he has for his wrestling fans, but I think what he's done with the Make-A-Wish Foundation and his passion for that is incredible.
Well, thank you for that. So, all of those are great picks. Now, I told you I did something a little bit different. Okay, I followed the same premise, but I thought outside the box. Okay, and I really appreciate and respect Marvin for his pick. I respect Richie for his pick, and I respect Justin for his pick. But I'm gonna go a different route. See, I did a little bit of research on some stuff, which is never good. Okay, it's never good for me to do research on stuff. And like I said, all those other people that I mentioned when we started this conversation, I could have went that route. But I went with Drazen Petrovic. Do you know who Drazen Petrovic is? Does anybody know?
No.
No? Okay. So just follow me real quick, okay? This guy was an international phenomenon, okay? He had gold medals, he had silver medals, he had bronze medals, okay? He played overseas, okay? He was an international player. He came and played on the New York Nets. The Nets. Sorry, he played for the New Jersey Nets, okay? He went toe-to-toe with Michael Jordan in the 90s. One of the best leaders in scoring from international to come to the NBA. such a hard time for him to come over that nobody actually really thought that he was going to make it in the NBA, because the NBA was so dominant with the stars that they had just over generations to generations. But he decided to come over from Croatia and make it happen. He had 3 phenomenal seasons in the NBA. You can look this up. It's a really good story. YouTube, Drazen Pojačević, okay? Look it up. It's a really good story. What he was able to do was change the mindset of people that lived overseas, okay? And then what they did was they migrated to the United States to play in the NBA. So he opened up this broad spectrum for people to come over here, okay? It's kind of almost like, Elijah. It's almost like, Dikembe Mutombo, okay? But this is different. This is European style, okay? So I'm gonna break down some numbers. Africa has had 58 international players. He didn't impact those. The Americas had 149. I'm talking about like Canada, South America, things like that, 149. Asia had 22 players that migrated over. Europe, 289 players have migrated over to play in the NBA. People such as Peja Stojakovic, okay, Dirk Nowitzki. If you ask them who got it all started for them, they'll tell you exactly who it was, okay? And the man is none other than Drazen Petrovic. That is who it is. Just like for us, it was MJ, or for a younger generation, it was Kobe, or for other generations, it was Magic, or it could have been Wilt Chamberlain. That's who they looked up to. These people, where they live, it's not always like what we think it is, okay? Sometimes people, they think they have it bad, but it's really not that bad over here in America. They're fighting for freedoms. We're fighting for freedom, different, because we're able to do a lot of things that we can still do. We're allowed to walk the street. We might get harassed about it, but some of these places, they can't even go outside. Some of these places, they get raped terribly every single day. 1 in 6 girls get raped in America, and I'm not trying to go that route. But this country where he comes from, that number is 1 out of 2 girls gets raped. That's sad that it has to be that way. And it is that way, and it's sad that it is. But what he was able to do is just is astonishing. It's not on the same level of what Marvin and Richie talked about from that aspect, but I wanted to bring something up about international players and how they pay homage to this man for making a difference, for working his ass off, to making it happen, his dream to come to the America and play in the NBA. And for that reason, they had the courage to do it as well. I encourage you to look it up. This is The Wire. Sorry to get real, but it is like that sometimes. If you have anything, post it down below. I'd love to read your comments, and maybe we'll even be able to talk about it next week's show. But once again, this is The Wire. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you next week. Stay fresh, stay clean, wear a mask, happy birthday, whatever it is, get it done.